Hello everyone. On this video we will be looking at multiplying and dividing positive and negative integers. Okay. Now remember, when you divide or multiply two integers or two positive or negative numbers, first you want to multiply or divide their absolute values. Okay. Now next you have two different scenarios. The first one, 2a, is if both of the original values have the same sign, then your answer will be positive. And 2b is if both of your original values have different signs, your answer will be negative. Okay. So if you are still writing this down, feel free to pause it and finish up. But we are going to go ahead and move on to the explanation as to why these are true. Okay. So let's say, how do we know that the rules apply to multiplication? So let's say, for example, we have 3 times 5, 3 times negative 5, negative 3 times positive 5, and negative 3 times negative 5. Okay, so here you have both positive, one positive, one negative, one positive, and both negative. Okay, so let's look at A. Okay, so we know that 3 times 5 is just 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. You're multiplying 3 to itself, you're adding 3 to itself 5 times. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is just 15, which is positive. So a positive times a positive equals a positive. Okay, let's look at B, where we have 3 times negative 5. Okay, now remember, 3 times negative 5 is the same as saying negative 5 times 3. Remember, you have the commutative property for multiplication, so you can flip them around. So negative 5 times 3 is just negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5. Again, you didn't have to flip it around to do that, but I just try to keep it in the same order. So you just added negative 5 to itself 3 times, which is negative 15. Okay, so a positive times a negative will give you a negative. Okay, let's say for problem C, let's look at negative 3 times 5. Okay, again, that's just negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3, which is negative 15. Okay, now what about D? We have two negatives. So let's say you have negative 3 times negative 5. Okay, so the opposite of 3, we can actually just pull that out to the front. So the opposite of 3 times the opposite of 5. Okay, so we know already, if we just do this part, 3 times negative 5, we already did that, and that's negative 15. Oops, negative of negative 15. So we know the opposite of negative 15 is positive 15. Okay, so a negative times a negative will give you a positive. Okay, so if you notice here, this one's negative, this one's negative, and this is positive. When they're both positive and when they're both negative, your answer will be positive. So when they're the same sign, your answer is positive. When they are different signs, your answer will be negative. And we're just talking two factors that you're multiplying. We're going to do a few examples of when you have more than two. Okay. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to move on to the next page, which will show us how do we know these rules apply to division. Okay. So to show you that, let's say we do 8 divided by 4. Okay. So if we rewrite that, we know that 8 divided by 4 equals 2, because if we go the opposite direction, 2 times 4 equals 8. Remember, adding is the opposite of subtracting. Subtracting is the opposite of adding. Division is the opposite of multiplication, and multiplication is the opposite of division. Okay, 8 divided by 4 equals 2. 2 times 4 equals 8. I'll just write it out instead of using the arrows. There we go. Because 2 times 4 equals 8. Okay, so what about 8 divided by negative 4? Okay, so if we rewrite that, 8 divided by negative 4 has to equal negative 2, because we've already shown that negative 2 times negative 4 will equal positive 8. Negative times a negative is positive. Negative 2 times negative 4 equals positive 8. Uh-oh, let me clean up that 8 a little bit. There we go. Okay, so let's say we have negative 8 divided by 4. Okay, so we rewrite that as negative 8 divided by positive 4. That has to equal negative 2, because negative 2 times positive 4 is equal to negative 8. We've already shown that a negative times a positive is a negative. Okay, so that's because negative 2 times 4 equals negative 8. Okay, and what about, let me move that up a little bit, negative 8 divided by negative 4? Well, if we rewrite that, you have negative 8 divided by negative 4. That has to equal positive 2, because a positive 2 times a negative 4 equals a negative 8. Two times negative 4 equals negative 8. Okay, now quick note, just something I want you to be aware of. If you have negative some number A over some number B, you can move that negative either to the top or to the bottom. So that could be negative A over B or A over negative B. It's the exact same thing. Okay, so for example, if you have negative 8 over 4, that can equal negative 8 over 4, or it can equal 8 over negative 4. Okay, they're all the exact same thing. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next examples. Okay, so let's say you wanted to multiply negative 6 times 10, 7 times negative 8, negative 7 times negative 8, negative 9 times negative 9, negative 5, and that negative 5 is in parentheses, squared, negative 4, and that negative 4 is in parentheses to the third power, and negative 5 squared without the parentheses. I'm going to show you the difference between these two. Okay, but first I want you to press pause and try these on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and tried it. So let's go ahead and verify. So -6 times 10, 6 times 10 is 60. But a negative times a positive is negative. Okay, so remember, we're going to multiply the absolute values first. So we're going to assume both of them are positive first, and then we're going to find out positive times negative, negative times positive, and go from there. Okay, so 7 times -8. Okay, so 7 times 8 is 56, but a positive times a negative is a negative. Okay, so let's say you have -7 times -8. Okay, again, 7 times 8 is 56, but a negative times a negative is a positive. So we leave that as positive 56. Okay, so if you have -9 times -9. Okay, so 9 times 9 is 81. Negative times a negative is a positive, so that stays positive. Okay, so what if you have -5 squared? Okay, so remember, -5 squared is just -5 times -5. 5 times 5 is 25. Negative times a negative is a positive. And remember, you don't have to put the plus sign there if it's positive. If there's nothing there, we automatically assume it's positive. Okay, so for f, you have -4 to the third power. Remember, that's -4 times -4 times -4. Okay. Now, when you have more than two signs that are being multiplied, just do 2 of them, and then multiply the third to that answer. So you have -4 times -4 is positive 16. So you can cross those out because you combine them here. So you have 16 times -4. Okay. So 16 times 4 is 64. Positive times negative is negative. Now we're going to look at G, and this is the most important one because this is where a lot of mistakes happen, and I don't want you to make those mistakes. On E, if you have -5 with the parentheses squared, that's -5 times -5. But if you don't have the parentheses, that -5 squared without the parentheses, that's the exact same as saying -1 times 5 squared. Okay, that's without the parentheses. If you had the parentheses around the negative, then you do it this way. But if you don't have any parentheses, this is how that would read. Okay, so we know that 5 times 5 is 25, so this would be -1 times 25, which is -25, because 25 times 1 is 25. Negative times a positive is a negative. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next group of examples. And that, we want you to divide and simplify for problem A, -15 divided by 5. For problem B, 50 divided by -25. Well, -50 divided by -25. I don't know if I said that right or not. For C, 12 divided by -4. For D, -35 divided by 7. And for E, 0 divided by -5. Okay, so you go ahead and press pause and try these on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and worked this out. So let's go ahead and verify your answers. You know that -15 divided by 5, if you want, you can rewrite it. Oh, let me put the A here. As -15 divided by 5. Okay, so 15 divided by 5 is 3. And negative divided by a positive is a negative. Okay. So for B, same thing, negative 50 divided by negative 25. If you want, again, you can rewrite it or you can solve it just like that. We have negative 50 divided by negative 25. Okay, so we know that 50 divided by 25 is 2. Negative divided by a negative is positive, so we leave that just like that. Okay, so what if we have 12 divided by negative 4? 12 divided by 4 is 3. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. So we leave it just as negative 3. So for D, again, negative 35 divided by 7. We can rewrite that as negative 35 divided by 7. 35 divided by 7 is 5. Negative divided by positive is negative. And for E, that should have been the easiest because 0 divided by any non-zero number equals 0. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause and finish up. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our last page of examples. There we go. Pages didn't want to separate. Okay, so let's say you want to multiply or divide negative 4 times 3 times negative 2. Or for B, 2 times negative 3 divided by 3 minus 6. For C, 7 times negative 2 minus 6 divided by negative 10. For D, 9 times negative 8 plus 5 times negative 1 divided by 12 minus 1. And for E, subtract negative 3 from the quotient of 27 and 9. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and try this one on your own. Excuse me. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and once again verify. For problem A, negative 4 times 3 times negative 2. So kind of separate that a little. Okay, so remember, when you have more than 2 terms, just pick 2 of them and multiply. 4 times 3 is 12. Negative times positive is negative. Okay, so you can go ahead and cross those out and bring down that negative 2. 12 times 2 is 24. Negative times a negative is a positive, so we leave it as positive 24. Okay, so for B, we have 2 times negative 3 over 3 minus 6. So we know that 2 times negative 3, well, 2 times 3 is 6. Positive times negative is negative. Uh-oh. Circled a little too early. Okay. And 3 minus 6 is negative 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. Negative divided by negative is positive. So we leave that just like that. Let's go down to problem C. 7 times negative 2 minus 6 over negative 10. Okay, so 7 times negative 2 is, well, 7 times 2 is 14. Positive times a negative is negative. So we have negative 14 minus 6 all over negative 10. And if you remember from the subtracting positives and negative, the rule of subtraction, if you have a minus 6, so you have negative 14, so instead of minus 6, you can make that plus negative 6 over negative 10. Okay, so negative 14 plus negative 6 equals negative 20 over negative 10. Uh-oh, there you go. 20 divided by 10 is minus 2. And negative divided by negative is positive. And I'm running out of space, so let me make sure I don't jumble these together too much. Okay, so we know that, let's say for D, 9 times negative 8 plus 5 times negative 1, all over 12 minus 1. 9 times 8 is 72. Positive times a negative is a negative. Okay, so let me clean that up a little. That's a little bit jammed in there. There we go. Plus 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. All over 12 minus 1, which is 11. That gives you negative 77 over 11, which is equal to negative 7. 77 divided by 11 is 7. Negative divided by positive is a negative. Okay, and E, subtract negative 3, let me bring that down, from the quotient of 27 and 9. Okay, so think of it this way. If you have the quotient of 27 and 9, you're going to subtract negative 3 from that quotient. Okay, so we know that 27 divided by 9 is equal to 3. So that 27 divided by 9 becomes 3. So that's minus negative 3. Again, using the rule of subtraction, or the definition of subtraction, we have a minus. You can make that a plus and then change the sign of the following number. So 3 minus negative 3 is just 3 plus positive 3. So the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3, which is 6. Okay, now I want to go back and just make sure that we're all good here. So we are good there. Make sure we covered everything we needed to cover. Yep, we covered everything we needed to cover. Okay, so hopefully this all made sense, and I will see you on the next video.